and just get it out. Okay, like that. Just get it a little longer, cover all the surfaces. And when it's a little bit warm too, the glaze sticks really nicely. Then we set it on our resting rack on a paper towel or just on a plate.
Let me introduce to you our tonight's chef. So Emilio has started his own small business this year, creating dinner kits for folks locally in the London, Ontario area. Alongside creating delicious dinner kits, Emilio has gone into growing his business by offering private in-home dinners that involves curating a tasting menu. Just to sprinkle more onto the menu, Emilio also offers drop-off baked goods to cater for small parties. Here is a chef that is truly passionate about cooking today. So you can also follow Emilio on his Instagram, which I will drop in the chat very soon. And now I'm just gonna pass it on to our tonight's chef, Emilio.
Okay, hi guys, Emilio, thank you for the wonderful introduction. So today we're doing the baked donuts, which are really nice because fried donuts take a lot of time and way more effort and they'll literally ruin your kitchen, but baked donuts are nice. It's like a donut, but it's like the cakey donut that you would get at like, it's like the Tim Hortons-esque style of cake donut that people love, but like way better. So yeah, so we're gonna do like a nice green icing little St. Patrick's Day theme, and we're gonna get right into it. It's a really good, simple recipe. So it's something you can make easily in under an hour. And it's one of those things like you give somebody a homemade donut and it's always gonna be impressive. So like if you're trying to impress anybody by baking them something, this is like a really good recipe to go for. You know, I got my stuff measured out here, but again, the ingredient list, it's nothing too crazy on there. So like, you know, you don't need to go to anything specialty store or anything like that. We're not using any yeast, which is for traditional donuts. So yeah, I think we're just gonna jump right into it. If anyone has any questions along the way, just ask. But again, it's a pretty straightforward recipe, just requires a little bit of technique, a little bit of tricks here and there, and it's super fun. So yeah. So to start, essentially, this is the nice thing about this recipe is that we're really using the dishes you see here. We're not gonna be dirtying the whole kitchen. We have two bowls. We have one for our dry ingredients and one for our wet ingredients. And these are my favorite kind of baked goods because I don't like getting the mixer out. I don't like dirtying everything. I like keeping it simple like this, especially if you're in like a dorm room or somewhere like a smaller apartment. It's really nice to bake just simply like this. So my first bowl, I have my flour and salt already in there. And then my second bowl for the wet is gonna have the sugar in there. So like I said, flour and salt, I'm just gonna add my nutmeg. The nutmeg's just gonna add, you're not really gonna taste it strong nutmeg. It's just a background nuttiness. The donut just adds a little depth to the dough. Get that in there. Let's get around. And then secondly, I have my baking soda and baking powder. This is what's going to give the donut the rise. Super important. It's almost acting as the yeast in this case, so we'll add that in there. And you know, like with any recipe, we'll just mix it around. Again, nice and simple. Get it all in there. Okay. So we're going to move on to the wet. Here, I have some buttermilk. But which is really great about any recipe that calls for buttermilk, if you just use regular milk and then you have some vinegar on hand or lemon juice, if you just throw a little shot in there and let it sit for 5 minutes, it's gonna curdle up nice like this. And that's what's gonna give us a nice sort of like background sourness. Again, more depth to the dough than just using regular milk. So we're gonna go ahead and add that into our sugar. See, it's nice and clumpy. It looks like it's like gone bad, but that's exactly what we want. And you'll get the same result again by just adding a touch of vinegar or lemon juice to regular milk. Got my eggs. They've been sitting here at room temp. Not totally necessary, but it's almost just like an added security measure for, you know, in case anything overbakes so the eggs don't scramble. If they're tempered at room temp, it's always better to bake eggs at room temp. But if not, honestly, it's probably fine. But so we'll just, it's one of those things when you read on a recipe, it's like, you know, put them at room temp and like you'll freak out, be like, oh my God, they're not at room temp. But it's one of those things like, does it matter? Yes. Like, is it going to change the end result that much? Not really. So like, it's probably fine. Okay. So anyways, just going to get the sugar, milk, and eggs whisked together. And then to the side, we're using 2 types of fat today. Melted butter and some neutral oil. You could honestly use any oil besides olive oil. If you only have olive oil, go ahead and use it. You just might have that like slight taste of olive oil in the donut, which honestly there's probably nothing wrong with. So I have some butter that I melted here that I cooled down just for a little bit. It's not super hot, so we don't cook the eggs. We're gonna add that in there. And the nice thing about having oil and butter, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, because a lot of recipes for cakes or donuts or cupcakes, they'll be one or the other. And you know, if we're gonna get scientific about it, there's like good things about oil, good things about butter. So I love a recipe that kind of has both, because then you don't feel like you're missing out. Because sometimes if I'm making a cake with just oil and I'm like, oh, butter's delicious, I'm missing out on butter. But then, you know, oil has its good things too. So, but maybe people see oil and they're like, ew, I don't like that. I don't know. But anyways, so this is our wet. Again, the sugar, the eggs, the buttermilk, our oil, and our melted butter. Just whisk it till it's all combined. And again, this is how simple this is. We got our dry here with the salt, the baking powder, the baking soda, the bit of nutmeg, and the flour in here. So we're just gonna go ahead and start slowly pouring in there. Just like that. We can take it off for a sec. Because ultimately we're just gonna get it's gonna be like a nice sort of thick batter. And then I'm gonna show you a cool little trick on how we're gonna get it into our special donut patch, which by the way, I haven't even talked about yet. These, like anything in the world, get them off Amazon. They're super cool. Yes, they only have one real purpose, which is for this. And if you don't have these, muffin tins work great. You can just pipe them into muffin tins. But these are really nice. They're kind of just like a little party trick, you know, like it's like, oh. So we're just stirring this with our hand, with our mix, with our whisk, sorry, until we get it all combined. Again, you know, it's a good beginner recipe also. If you're kind of intimidated by anything baking, then this is something you don't need a lot of special equipment. We're just going to keep going until we don't see any clumps. This requires a little bit of wrist power, and we're pretty much there. See that? But I don't want to lie, I did forget one thing. I did forget my vanilla. I always forget vanilla. I don't want to forget vanilla this time. If you do forget vanilla, it's probably fine. But the nice thing about vanilla is you can literally add it any time. So ideally, I would have added it with my eggs. So I'm going to go ahead with a half a teaspoon, and we'll just add it in right now. So I'm glad I remembered, because I'm going to be eating these later and be like, forgot the vanilla, like that sucks. But I guess it wouldn't really matter for the viewership, but for me, I would have been sad. So there we go. We got the nice aroma. Also, as you see, like I got artificial vanilla. Like, let's be honest, like nobody wants to spend $15 on the bottle that big. This stuff is honestly fine. This was $3. You're still getting the great thing about vanilla. Maybe you might feel like a bit of a phony, but I personally like, it's a great deal, especially if you're baking on a budget. I mean, the real stuff's better, but I got the artificial stuff. Okay, so that's our batter. Now, also it's worth mentioning, I do have my oven preheated to 350. That's obviously important, but I'm gonna show you guys. So I wanted to go, if you have piping bags, that's great. But this is also another method that I want to use, just any regular Ziploc bag. I realize this one's massive, but any sort of Ziploc bag you have works great for this. You don't need any special piping tips. So I'm gonna show you, it's kind of a cool trick. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna get the bag, any sort of large cup or something that you can put this inside of, like so. So we're gonna essentially manipulate this bag to be our piping bag. And again, it takes a little stress off of, oh, you don't have a piping bag, then you might not want to make it. Chances are you probably have a Ziploc bag. So I got a spatula right here. We're just gonna get this batter right into the bag like this. This is, you know, you can use this technique for most things when it comes to piping, as long as you're not decorating. But there is a lot of recipes that will call for a piping bag. And if you don't need a fancy tip, then this method will work just great. Got it in there. Okay, so I've got a big bag with batter in it. So essentially what I'm gonna do now, you see I have one corner where nothing's in. I'm gonna close this bag up, just like that. And then I got scissors. Simply just gonna cut a nice little spot right here. And this is gonna be, I'm gonna push everything kind of up. Now I got my makeshift piping bag. It doesn't look very sexy, but it will do the job. So now what we're gonna do with our little donut tins, what I did beforehand, I had a little bit of melted butter. I just used some paper towel and lightly greased these. If they're brand new, chances are you don't even need to grease them. But again, it's just one of those extra security layers that comes with baking when you're like, if I can do something ahead of time, that's not gonna, they'll make my life easier in the long run. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but let's just do it anyway. Because again, with baking, if one thing screws up, if these get stuck in here and I pull them out, then it's game over. And with cooking, you can save stuff. With the baking, you always want to be cautious. So I'm kind of twisting this end here and then sort of getting it like that. And then what I'm going to do is with all these, just go kind of around in a slow circle. Careful not to fill them too much. And we'll get them just like that. That one wasn't perfect, but again, as the time goes on, we'll get it better. It's a good one. So yeah, the first time that I made these baked donuts, I kind of thought like, there's no way they're gonna be nearly as good as fried ones, but to be honest, I was pretty surprised. It's sort of like, it's a different style of donut, but they're actually quite nice. And like normally, normal donuts will take hours of time and you need a deep fry and blah, blah, blah. Whereas this, like you already see, it's been however many minutes and we're already just about to throw these in the oven. So that's super exciting. You know, you might get a little bit messy with the bag here, but that's okay. I'm just putting light pressure on the bag, just trying to be careful here. Again, if you have a piping bag's great, obviously, but I thought this would just be a nice way to do it, to try to use as little special equipment as possible. And yeah, like I said, if you just have like a muffin tin, you can just pipe these right into a muffin tin. You don't get the nice hole, but you can also, again, just cut out a hole after, and then it's kind of like it's almost like it looks like a secondhand donut in a way, but in like the best way possible. It's like a vintage looking donut that way. Maybe people don't like that. I think it's kind of cool, but due to all the baking powder in here, these will puff up nicely. And then if any parts are kind of like this, you can wet your finger and just sort of push them down, get them nice and neater like that, so it doesn't stick to you too much. But again, these are fine. They're gonna puff up. They're gonna look. And the thing you can remember with this recipe is that we're gonna be covering it in glaze anyway. So if it's not, you know, perfectly aesthetic, it's fine because you just cover up your mistakes. So I'm gonna get these and toss in the oven, 350. They're only gonna take about 15 minutes. Time right here. Now we're gonna move on to the fun part. This is the part where, you know, you can be a little bit more creative when it comes to making the glaze. I just have like a very standard base recipe for the glaze here with all the icing sugar. The reason why I use icing sugar, obviously, is fine, and there is a little bit of cornstarch already put into icing sugar, which helps everything hold together. And then we got some milk, some melted butter, and St.Paddy, we got a little bit of green food coloring. Green food coloring, if you don't like food coloring, leave it out. That's totally fine, but we're just gonna add a little bit in here. It's gonna look really nice. So essentially what we're gonna do with the glaze, we have the icing sugar here. With the glaze, the milk, we're gonna soften up all this icing sugar. And it's kind of one of those things that you really want to get the right consistency with. So that's what I mean about being creative. Sometimes you'll need to add more, you'll need to add less. It's one of those things, it's kind of fun, honestly. Like, and then if you wanted to add different spices, you wanted to add some booze to it or something like that, But we just got our liquids in here. And we're gonna whisk it around. So you can see.
Dean asked, how do you get your kitchen so clean?
I see. I can't sleep good if my kitchen's not clean. So I'm a little bit. I obsess over that. So yeah. So we got like a little paste here. So obviously we have some more milk. At this point, we know we want to thin it out a little bit, because recipes will tell you one thing, but a lot of times, like, you have to use tuition. You're not going to dunk it in this like pasty stuff. So we know we want to add a little bit more liquid. And most glaze recipes will give you just, the basis of things. And then you kind of sometimes have to figure it out for yourself or what's going to work for you. But this glaze is great. You can use it for pound cakes. You can use it for any sort of cake, cupcakes, lemon poppy seed. So there, we're getting there. But I think we do just want a little bit more liquid to soften it up. Get it just a little bit more runny. And you want to be careful too, if you add too much, then you're going to need to add more sugar to get it back to a syrupy consistency. So we're just about there. It's like, it's one of those things you make once and then you do it and then you realize, okay, I want that consistency. It works. It just comes with a little bit of experience. So there, I like that consistency. You can see that. Now from here, I do want to add just a splash of vanilla, because a little bit of flavor never hurt anybody. Just a splash. And also what I like to do with these glazes that most recipes don't do, I just add a pinch of salt because it's all essentially sugar. So doing this just actually brings out the milky flavor a little bit. It just gives it, so you're not just getting straight sugar in your mouth. So I just add, again, just a tiny pinch of salt. It does go a long way. Now here, got a little green food coloring. If we add too much, then it's going to taste horrible. If we don't have enough, it won't look nice. So we'll start with like a couple drops and see what happens here. So that's coming together nice. That's like a shamrock shake color, but we can add a little bit more. You have to add a lot of this to get like that really chemically taste. So we can just add another splash. See, that's a nice little pale green. So we'll just add a tiny bit more. You know what? That's nice. I'm gonna add it just because I want it to look nice for a picture or something. There you go. That's how I want to make it. So we got kind of like a darkish green there. Yeah, about 6 drops of the food coloring. But again, it's one of those things where all different food coloring brands, some are stronger than others. So just add a little bit at first and then kind of see what works for you going from there. Okay, so like I said, this recipe, it goes by quick, which is nice. So what I did earlier, I did bake off some donuts just because these ones were going to be in the oven for a little bit. Like I said, it's a super quick recipe. And that's like the one thing about baking that I stress if you're going to do it. If you take, like you said about a clean kitchen, if you take 20 minutes before, you're going to have a baking project, just to be like, I want to get everything sort of measured out or kind of ready to go. Then the actual baking process, people think of baking has this like all day thing where your kitchen is going to be messed up. But if you just take that like short time to get yourself really organized, I have my teaspoons here, my scissors here, I have the whisk ready, and you kind of clean as you go, then like your mind just works like a lot better and you go through it a lot quicker than the stuff's in the oven and you're laughing, it's not an all day thing. So I'll get these donuts that I tested earlier. These ones you see here. So they kind of look like little like sponge cakes almost. They do have a nice little texture though. I pulled these ones out when they were still pretty warm, so some bits came off. But what you want to do when they come out of the oven, let them cool for like at least 20 minutes, and they should just slide right out of that pan because all those pans are usually non-stick anyways. So let's try to dip some here and see. And again, this is going to be one of those things. If we dip it in and we find that the consistency isn't right with our glaze, then we simply, add more liquid or add more sugar. So yeah, when you're dipping the donut in, you can just kind of hold it like that.
Wait.
Sorry. Yes, set it right in there. And then just get it out. Okay, like that. Just get it a little longer, cover all the surfaces. And when it's a little bit warm too, the glaze sticks really nicely. Then we set it on our resting rack on a paper towel or just on a plate. That's fine too. Get another one here so you can see. Again, when it's warmer, it's all like a little bit smoother. So yeah, those are that. And then, you know, personally, I would even think like maybe I want to add more food coloring. I don't know, but they look nice. You can tell they're green. But that's the thing with food coloring. You don't want to add so much as you want that like nice dark green. You also don't want the chemically taste. And then at this point too, like for an example, I think in here, you can kind of get creative at this point too. Actually, hold this one.
1 second.
I have, and here. So I have some sprinkles on hand. Also, what would go great if you had like some shortbread cookies, you could just crumble on top. Chocolate chips would go really well. Also with this glaze too, if you had some Baileys or any sort of rum, that would be really nice in there, especially go with the Irish theme. So we'll just put those on nice like that.
Thanks, Dean. You said great camera work.
Oh yeah, that's my sister Sophia. She's helping me out here. So yeah, the sprinkle, and then the sprinkles just give it that pop because like it doesn't look like this like sad little green thing anymore. With any donuts, I like to put, and the sprinkles add a little bit of texture too, which is nice. So yeah, that's that. And then the glaze will sit here for about 10 minutes, and that sugar is gonna harden up. And if you bite into it right now, it'll kind of have that like soft consistency. But if you wait and let it set, then it'll sort of have that kind of like not crunch, but you know when you bite into like a Krispy Kreme and that sugar sort of cracks. Like that's kind of what we're looking for with this. For you know, like I said, when they come out, let them cool down. You have your glaze ready. If your glaze is too thick or too thin, you want to add more icing sugar. But if it's too thick, you just want to thin it out with a little bit of milk and you're good to go from there. And these donuts, again, they can sit at room temp for a couple of days. You can throw them in the fridge. You can actually even throw them in the freezer in bags once they cool down, pull them out, let them thaw at room temperature. Yeah, they're really great. You know, if you're going somewhere, bring a platter of like 12 of these. It's just like a nice snack. They're not too heavy. They're not too sweet. They're a little bit salty. And yeah, I think that's it, guys. Again, a simple recipe. We just went through it really quickly. I think it's a good recipe because it's straightforward, easy to follow, you know, minimal equipment. And then what we used, again, just to talk about it, you know, was just the flour, sugar, eggs, like pantry staples. We had the green food coloring, which is something you might have to go out and buy. The dollar store has it, obviously. And then the bag, like we said, the Ziploc bag trick. If not, like in the grocery store in the baking aisles, they actually have those cute little fancy bags with the tips on it. So those are nice too. Sprinkles you can get, again, dollar store. Most of these things, dollar store. This resting rack, actually, if you are doing baking, again, dollar store, they're really great. I have like 10 of them. And they're perfect for, you know, anything like this. I just put the paper towel under there because the icing drips off a little bit. I should give it a taste here. And if it's bad, I'll tell you. If it's bad, then, you know, let's forget this whole thing. Okay, I'm gonna try it here. So yeah, it has like a, you know, it's different from a fried donut. It has a cakier consistency. So let's just give it a bite here. Honestly, I've made it before. I knew it was gonna be good, but with the glaze and the sprinkles, it's actually quite nice. And the bit of vanilla in the glaze actually goes a long way. So don't skip on the vanilla. The food coloring, you can't taste it, but you almost feel as if like you're eating something holiday themed because you're just biting into those colors with the sprinkles. Or again, chocolate chips, shortbread, any sort of thing on there, grated chocolate even. So yeah, hopefully you guys like this recipe. Super simple, super cute. even kid friendly too, honestly. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys. Oh yeah, see, even right here, see they puff up nicely. You know what? And I actually think they're probably done. So don't take them out the way I'm doing. Use an oven mitt. But we got our resting knife right here. That's perfect. I thought, because like I didn't want to have that bit of awkwardness where I was like, okay, let's just stand here and wait for donuts. But we got the donuts. So let's just move these over. Okay, so with these, they're nice. You can see, remember when we piped them in, they weren't even touching the tops, but now they've risen up nicely. You can get a little Perry knife here, and you can just check to double check. If it comes out clean like that, you're all good to go. Okay, so yeah, and then this is them. I'll pull one out. I'll break my rule of letting them sit, just to kind of show you. I think they're nice. See, even with me doing it, you can see ones where I should, like this one's nice because the hole is really prominent, but when I piped too much in there, the hole kind of gets covered. So I have this as a little offset spatula, great baking tool if you like to bake. So here, we'll pull this out. So see, that's what happens. See, this is a good example. When you don't let it sit and cool in there, then you're gonna kind of scuff it up a little bit. But it almost does look like a mini bagel actually. But it's a cute little donut. The bottoms get like nice, a little bit brown. And then we would glaze the top of this. So yeah, let them cool in here and you don't get this issue. But this is actually a good lesson to show, because sometimes you get really impatient when you're baking. You want to pull it out right away. You want to pull the cake out right away. Then you've just ruined an hour of work because you got impatient. Like I've done that so many times. Yeah, this beautiful cake, you just want to ice it right away. So you're like, I'm just gonna scrape it out and get it. And then like half of it falls on the counter. And it literally sucks because what are you gonna do, right? Like you're screwed at that point. So yeah, these are cooling here. Move this over.
Want to try to glaze the hot one?
Yeah, let's glaze a hot one. So I'm just gonna get my whisk again. Whisk that up nice, because when it sits for a bit, the sugar starts to set. So you just have to set it up again. So even here you can see, not quite, but when it cools down, it's gonna have sort of that shell on there, which is what you want with a donut. You want the snap from the sugar. So nice and hot, just dunk it in there. Use this. See, when it's hot, it doesn't stick as well, so you want to let it cool down a little bit. But yeah.
You can see the difference.
Yeah, so again, this part is showing you how to not do it. If you want to rush it, you're not going to get the best results. You can see the difference here. The glaze doesn't stick as well when it's really hot, and when it's cooled down, it sticks nicely. So it's kind of, a good lesson when it comes to any baking. It requires patience if you're going to do it. Make sure, you have a good hour and a half, that you're not going to have to rush it. Start it early in the morning or do it late at night. If you got to be somewhere at 5, don't start baking at 4, that kind of thing. Good recipe, super delicious. Hopefully some of you guys make it. If not, I'm glad that you just watched and baked along with me. It was a good time. I was excited to do this one. I think it's a cute recipe. But I think that's all from me. Unless you want me to tell you my life story, but that's not fun.
Thank you so much, Emilio. We really appreciate it. And those donuts look so cute. I wish I was there to eat some.
Right?
So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight for this virtual baking night.